It has nothing to do with our weight or our size. I have to take more and more and more to try to get to an optimal level. It is our own internal body's physiology, and we have to find what's right for each of us.
Welcome back to Born Superhuman. So a podcast that we recently had was with a brilliant person that I found on social media. And I'm sure by the time this comes out, you would have already listened to Lisa Levy. Now, after we finished the last podcast, I realized there was so much more to do. And Lisa offered to come back in and give her 11 favorite peptides, what they do. But before we get to that, there were some things that really stood out in the last podcast for me, which was the specifics and some of the reels that are be coming out about how dynamic peptides are, even though there's two sides on it. And we're going to get into that today to start. And then we're going to dive into everything that you would want to know about peptides. So to get going, Lisa, lovely to have you back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
It's awesome. So the last podcast, and I loved it. I actually watched it this morning before we release it. And there was a couple of things in there that really stood out. But the one that I want to tap into before we start today is you talked about who you would work with, because we know peptides right now it's this big word. Everyone's jumping in. You either love it or you think it's fake. But the one thing that stood out for me is if you're not willing to do the work yourself, the peptides are just a band-aid. You're not really going to see the benefits. So explain to us a little bit about the work and who this is great for as a recap.
So, look, we talked a lot about the GLPs, and let's put that in a separate category, and I'll just tell you why briefly. The GLP-1s are going to help you lose weight, even if you sit around on your butt, you drink Coke, and you eat candy, or do everything, against sort of what we sort of say is a healthy lifestyle. They're still going to help you lose weight. But after you lose the weight, if you haven't done the foundational things you need to do, you're going to be less weight on the scale, but you're likely, almost with 100% certainty, going to have more body fat, which means you actually have to eat less and less and less, and it will backfire on you. You will never be able to go off of them, and then you're going to get to the highest level, the highest dose, and it will stop working. And what you're left with is no foundational changes. So what I mean is, if you don't prioritize whole foods, protein, and some resistance training, and I'm not talking about you don't need to be in a gym hours and hours and hours a day. That may be my choice. That doesn't work for everybody. But if you don't do something to maintain your muscle, which is the bank for your carbohydrates in essence, most people aren't binging out on chicken breasts. And if they do, they're going to be fine. But when they're eating all the foods that contribute to this insulin resistance and this metabolic, imbalance, they are going to create a body that has more body fat, and they won't be able to lose weight anymore. I mean, you almost have to start from the bottom again, which I've had people come to me and do. So the peptides, that's the GLPs. If you don't do all the things, though, my one takeaway is, in the end, they will fail you. And it's very upsetting that most doctors do not understand this. And I hear it almost every day. I had a woman come to me actually on Friday. She was about 49% body fat, and she worked with me, but she just couldn't afford, what I charge monthly for the GLP. I said, you need to go to your doctor. Try to get this through insurance. If there's anyone that deserves it, it's her. And her doctor said, quote, "You are not obese. This is absurd." So this is a person who's almost 50% of her body is body fat. She knows that's wrong. So doctors, unfortunately, they don't require all the things that I want to create that foundation. They don't require a DEXA scan, which shows us how much body fat you have. And that informs what peptides I want to use and how I want to work with you. Also, blood work. I am not saying that you can't take a peptide if you don't have blood work, but I want to know what your vitamin D is. I want to know what your vitamin B is because when those things are optimized, and I think we talked about this, I'm not a big supplement pusher, but there are a few things that are foundational to your body working efficiently. And when you do that, the peptides are like the cherry on the top. They are able to go in and repair or create new energy pathways in all their various ways without being harassed basically about all the digestion and the insulin and the way we lead these unhealthy lives. Does that make sense? So my favorite clients really are the people who are already doing everything they're supposed to be doing. They're already eating, and I'm not saying 100% of the diet, but 80% of it is good quality whole foods, and you're not eating a lot of processed food, and they're exercising, and they want those tweaks. They don't want to get sick. They want to make sure that they have repair and recovery. They want to make sure that their brain is functioning at the highest level, that they're not feeling anxiety, and all these different peptides just naturally, seamlessly go into your body. They find their way to we talked last time about the lock and the key, and they open up your body's ability to do these things on their own. They're not unnatural to the body. We have these peptides flowing through us daily, but they get blocked. So if we're not prioritizing that foundation, then I sort of do tell people you're kind of wasting your money because they are going to work and some of them are still going to work. But if you really want to use these effectively, and honestly, that goes for supplements as well. Why take a bunch of supplements if you're eating pizza every night for dinner? And that's not a judgment. I'm not judging. Everybody can make their own choice. But I would kind of say the same thing. Why are you taking omega-3 and this and that and all this laundry list of things that I get from people if you're not doing the other things you need to do?
So part of my takeaway from that is the weight loss that you get from taking GLP-1 if you're not doing exercise, if you're not getting resistance training, if you're not making ultimately a lifestyle change from what took you to where you are and make that change to go where you want to go, you're really losing a lot of the weight from your muscle. It's not necessarily fat that's coming off. We're judging the scale, but the scale isn't giving the true story. So
Yep.
as we dive into this now, people will have to understand you need to make a lifestyle change towards where you want to go. And it can be a slow change, but you're going to get more into it because you see the results, feel the results, and love the results. You've also got to bring exercise, some form of exercise movement to your support system because your body needs it with or without taking peptides.
Well,
And then
that's correct. And also, just to interject one thing, um, along the lines of what you're saying, the thing is that people blame the GLPs. And again, this is something I hear every day. Oh, I don't want to go to a high dose because it's going to make me lose muscle. No, the GLP is not going to make you lose muscle. Or people say, I don't want Ozempic face. I don't want to be, you don't want to be drawn looking. It's not the GLP. It's losing weight too rapidly. So I like at most 2 pounds a week. And I'm talking about, if I had a very thin person that just wanted a little maybe postmenopausal tweaking, I'd say 1 pound a week at most, like 3 to 4 pounds a month at most. But even for somebody who's very, very heavy, I mean, 8 pounds a week. Sorry, 8 pounds a month. If we don't lose it slowly, we will lose muscle. A little bit of muscle loss is okay if you're like super obese, but sorry, I interrupted you to just say that it's not the GLPs that cause you to lose the muscle. It's the rapid weight loss, not exercising and not eating enough protein.
which goes back to the natural part of health and living that we've done for centuries, which is healthy food, which is out there. We talked about it last time. You can find it. You just got to put the effort in and it's worth it. exercise, sleep, supplementing where you want to go if you're already in a good place and want to go to a higher place as well. Or if you've gone completely extreme, you've lost your health, peptides can help. But at the end of the day, it's still going to come down to the actions you take. There is no magic pill that will prevent you having to do the work you want to do.
Correct.
Perfect. So, with that being said, I'm really excited. We're going to jump into Lisa's 11.
So before we go to the 11, it was 10, but I forgot about one, and we may not get through all of them. But everybody asked me about collagen. Collagen is not an injectable peptide. So it's differentiated from the rest of the peptides we're going to talk about, but everyone has heard of it. So people say to me, wait, I've heard of peptides, collagen peptides. They see it on the bottles. It comes in powders, pills, gummies. I don't like gummies, but any of those forms. Uh, and yes, collagen is a peptide and it can help with joints, skin, fine lines, protective of muscles, potentially maybe osteoporosis. I mean, I've heard that, osteoarthritis, joint pain, everything else. So collagen is a peptide. It is not a good quality protein. So people say, "Oh, well, I put collagen, in my drink in the morning, so I'm getting protein." Don't count that as a protein. But yes, collagen is a peptide and it can come in many forms. And I think when people hear that, they go, "Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. Peptides are natural to the body." So we talked last time, insulin's a peptide, GLP is a peptide, collagen's a peptide. But let's move on to some of the other things that I work with all the time. And I think the gateway peptide is BPC-157. Most people who are paying attention at all have heard of BPC-157. I know for me, that's the one peptide I heard about long before I heard about the GLPs. I know people who've been using it all over the world for many, many years. And in this country, we talked about this whole situation with the FDA. It was being used by some of these more out of the box thinking doctors for many, many years with great success. We also talked about why there are no human studies or very few, but you can go on PubMed and some of these other and find a few studies, lots of animal models, lots of anecdotal data. Many, many doctors. There was a clinic in Florida. He was using it on even teenage athletes. I'm spacing his name right now, but like a well-known doctor until he was ordered to cease and desist. So BPC 157 stands for Body Protective Compound and it is made from the gastric juices of the gut. I feel very strongly that it's the only peptide that I have come across that the oral version works just as well as the injectable version, but they work differently. So the oral version is what I give to somebody who has, acid reflux. Okay. I have a guy that's been on PPIs and all these medications for like 40 years. I mean, just literally taking, over the counter crappy drugs to tamp down that stomach acid. Already, he's on like 6 weeks of the oral BPC, is already feeling much better. A lot of people with gut issues, they take it for a couple months. And by the way, there's tons of brands out there that actually repair the gut. That's for gut repair and gut healing. The injectable version of it is what we use to help small repairs in small doses, recovery from muscle strain. So it's something I use prophylactically. I'll use it 3 to 4 times a week. I will inject it, in my stomach, but it's systemic. That way I have no problem with recovery from my workout. I mean, I honestly really don't get sore, no matter how far I push it, because the BBC is creating angiogenesis. It's sending blood flow to where it needs to go. It knows where it needs to go. So it's almost like there's these flags going, "Hey, help me out, come here." And it's traveling through the body and repairing. So I may inject it in my stomach, but it's going everywhere it needs to go. I will say that there's some data that shows the closer to the site of injury, you'll get a better response. So let's say my knee feels a bit tweaked, or I was having a shoulder thing last week. So anything over my head, I was feeling it with these compound movements. I personally cannot inject into my arm because it reminds me of shots when I was a kid or a vaccine. So I put everything in my stomach, my knee, or my Achilles. So the healing power of this peptide is just unlike anything else. And we also talked about, I'm sure, there's no toxic load.
Mm.
So the starting dose would be very small. I don't work with that. I always start with a pretty decent dose because like let's get to the point already. Let's get some healing in. Um, it it is what we call pleiotropic, so it does many things. I do think that you'll have some gut healing from the injection, but primarily, if the goal is to either prehab before surgery, rehab after surgery, any kind of back pain. And by the way, for chronic things, it can be helpful. When you have something acute, I want to get to it right away. Like if you roll your ankle or you pull an Achilles, you're playing tennis, or, for me, it's like I tend to have a little problem with this elbow. I want to get to it right away. But if someone comes to me and like, I broke my toe, last fall and it's just not healing, so we'll go with heavy doses for, a couple months. And I mean, more times than not, after a month, people say, wow, I can't believe that I feel better. Mostly people are shocked that they actually feel better. Or my aunt was double dosing herself by mistake. She was taking I don't know, she wasn't reading my instructions. But that's what did it. She was having an issue from tennis. And the double dosing, she finally saw a change. So sometimes it takes a little while to dial it in. So BPC 157, I mean, I wouldn't travel without it. I know that if I do something, boom, I get to it right away.
So I got two questions from that because it's fascinating. First one, let's talk about the injection. What's the size of the needle? Because I've never been into injections myself, not doing it myself, just anybody doing it to me. Tell me about the injection process first.
So I am incredibly needle phobic. I just want to say I've been needle phobic my whole life. The fact that I do this now almost every day, I sort of have to like laugh at myself a little bit. Okay. I'm so needle phobic that as a grown woman I was probably 30, 32 years old, something like that. I cut myself very badly. A friend took me to the hospital. A friend who I'm now married to. Sorry, my current husband took me to the hospital. He had to leave because he was traveling or something. He called my dad. I'm literally a grown woman. And my dad gets to the hospital and he said, she probably needs a tetanus shot. And I was like, no, no, no. And he literally grabbed my arm and said, sticker. I mean, I would have run screaming from the room. So that just gives you, okay, this is different. A lot of people came to the GLPs with the pre-injected pen, and it literally looks like a pen, and you put it on your stomach or your thigh or your butt or whatever, and it releases a tiny little needle that you literally can't feel. So that's the pre-injected pen. I I did not find that as scary because you're not looking at the syringe. You're literally looking at a plastic cartridge. Cut to, that was a few years ago. The syringes are called insulin syringes. It's a 31 gauge syringe. It's like a fine piece of hair. You really can't feel it. It is a psychological thing of like, can I actually inject myself? I have to just not think about it. Like I said, I can't inject my arm. My daughter actually broke both of her elbows and she was literally like double fisting and injecting her and she healed like that. Um, I can't do that. So almost everything goes in my stomach or my hip. I can't think about it, but I do it. They are fine, fine, fine needles that you just don't feel. So it is like this response that people get. I've had people lay down on the floor and almost pass out, and they start hyperventilating and sweating. And I would say, like, you don't have to do this. I mean, we're all good. Go ahead on your way. Everyone gets over it. I've had people scream, grown people, mommy, 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 and they get over it. So that's what the injections are. And what I provide people is a very concierge type service. Everything's dosed out, labeled. They don't have to do the draws themselves. They don't have to think about it. I have people that do that, but all my Mexico clients, I can't provide that service because it would take me hours and hours and hours and it wouldn't be it would just be too, costly. But so they're getting a completely done package. They don't have to think about it. They know I have this in the AM. I get up, I take it out of the fridge, I do it, I'm done, we move on.
Yeah, I got to share this story. I was playing the lead in Andrew Lloyd Webber's show, and we were going to tour Japan for almost a year. And I had to go and get these shots that you have to go to Japan because of yellow fever and all this stuff. And I'm playing the macho guy in the show. And I went to get my shots. The first shot I passed out, I hit the ground. They didn't get me the rest of the shots, and I went to Japan without having them. I did get really sick over there, and I thought I was going to die actually. But so that's my needle phobia, although I have got much better as I've aged.
But
Um,
I'm the same way. If I had to go, we used to travel to Asia and Africa. I'm the exact same way. If I have to go to a doctor and I start hyperventilating, I'm exactly the same way. This just doesn't feel like that when you're in your own environment or you're traveling in your hotel. They're so little and so small, and you just have to like let your mind go somewhere else. You do it and you're done, and it takes a second. I think the buildup of being in a doctor's office, even right now, as you were telling that story, I started like, I hope I don't have to go anywhere where I need a vaccine or anything. I get you.
no, I just did a test as well with a great company, and they have the same thing. You put it on your arm, they press a button, it goes in. This is actually for drawing blood. You don't even feel anything. So I do believe it is this placebo effect of mental stress because of what we presume, whereas the reality is you don't even see it and barely even feel it.
And that's going to come with peptides as well. There are going to be new ways of administering the peptides. There are some nasal sprays that work okay. We had these buccal strips, these strips you put in your mouth. I don't think we're there yet. I've had a lot of manufacturers I've spoken to like pushing them. Really, what do you think the efficacy is? I've gotten to 30%. And then we're going to have these patches we're going to put on. To me, that freaks me out a little bit more, but we'll see. The idea of like something going in all the time, but right now the injections are the best thing we have.
That's beautiful. So before we go on to the next one, this is the second question I have. When you take a peptide, you've had an injury, it now heals. Do you have to keep taking the peptide to stop it re-injuring? Is it something that you have to go to technique and say, why was I injured? Was I pushing too much weight? Or does it heal fully and then I should be able to just continue with everyday life?
Correct. It heals fully and you continue with everyday life. Now, again, as I said, I use BPC 3 to 4 times a week prophylactically. If I want to stop for a week or two, I can do that. BPC is one of the peptides we don't have to cycle off of. So for most people, it just comes down to dollars and cents. Can they afford to continue it all the time? Going back to my daughter's accident, she broke both elbows and the scaphoid bone, and the scaphoid bone is very hard to heal. And she was told 10 weeks. And at 7 weeks, the doctor could not see the break on the X-ray, and they were able to take the cast off. She actually kept going there frequently to get X-rays and get new casts because she was so miserable. But he said that's the peptides. There's no possibility to heal that fast. Then she stopped. So because these are already in our system, they are signals for the body to heal the way it needs to heal in a maybe a more accelerated way. But if you were 10 years old and you had that same break, it probably would have healed in a few weeks. But as you age, it takes longer and longer for the body to heal. So I have a daughter who broke her arm. She must have been 5. I mean, and the cast was on literally for a few weeks and it was healed. But then my 28-year-old, when she did it, the same thing, he said 10 weeks. So it shows you how different. So this is accelerating. It's like an anti-aging in a weird way. It's
Sure.
helping you do what you probably could have done 20, 30 years ago.
So that answers those questions. Let's jump on to the next one.
So BPC pairs very well with something called BPC-157 pairs well with TB-500. And a lot of people know this as the Wolverine stack. And I think it was named Wolverine from the movie Hugh Jackman or whatever, and how they're able, I didn't see it, but like, repair quickly or something. And TB-500 is actually a fragment of a peptide called thymosin beta 4. And thymosin beta 4 has all these different fragments that do different things. I'm going to leave that aside. TB500 is a fragment. I think it's 17 to 23 amino acids, and that is the driver, and it helps the BPC sort of know where to go. So the BPC is creating all this energy and blood flow and angiogenesis, and the TB500 is like the docking station saying, like the guy at the airport going, you go here, you go here, you go here. And it's a synthetic of because it's been taken out this fragment from the thymosin beta 4 and the TB500 and the BPC, which good news is they can be in the same vial and they can work well. So you don't have to work with them separately if you don't want to, but it's enhancing the recovery. It's like the supercharger when they're paired together. So that's also something that for just to protect myself, I don't take TB500 all the time. I also want to make sure my receptors stay clean so that if I do hurt myself or someone in my family hurts themselves, we can go in and add TB500 and sort of, supercharge that recovery. So that's not something I take prophylactically, but those two together, reducing inflammation. Listen, we want some inflammation, right? When
Mm.
we, like you see, I cut myself. So when you cut yourself, when you fall down, you hurt your knee, there's going to be some inflammation for a few days. We want that. But the problem is it just stays around. So the BBC and the TB500 together help reduce that healing time by usually a significant amount.
What does TB500 do on its own then? Would you take it on its own?
You could. It's a systemic recovery peptide in a way that BPC is. I don't have a lot of people that do that, although it can help with circulation, flexibility. It's a great question. It's just not I usually reserve that when we have healing that needs to happen because people come to me with so many different issues, and if there's something that needs to heal, I most of the time will pair them together.
Interesting, because you talk about circulation flexibility. Um, is there another peptide? We won't talk about it now if it's on your list because we'll get there. But are there other peptides that would work? So if somebody has the need for better blood flow, or they're really stiff in their joints, is there another peptide that's better for that than the TB500?
I do think that BPC-157 and TB-500 are the best for that. There is one more that's a very interesting peptide. I didn't put on my list, but it's starting to become very popular. It's called KPV. And KPV is also it is another gut healing peptide, but it's also an anti-inflammatory peptide and it helps with histamine reactions. So KPV would be the only other one that I would sort of say would be in that zone, but I will most likely go to BBC and TB first unless like my mom was having terrible allergies and her doctor said the oaks or something and we live on the west side of LA and they're really bad this year and I've had a couple other people say their allergies are really bad. So I'll use KPV because it's going to help with the histamine reaction, but it's also going to help reduce inflammation and everything that's kind of getting clogged up in the sinuses and everything else. And it's a gut healer. That's one so that would be the only other one, but I mean, listen, we could go down this road. There's ARA-290, which is a nerve healing peptide. So you can see how those can stack, right? You have BPC, TB, oh, and somebody's having like a sciatic nerve pain. And it's extending down their leg. I had someone reach out yesterday. She's having horrible nerve pain up here. So I would stack those three. And actually, my husband's dealing with an elbow situation right now. So I've stacked in Cartilax. So again, healing, but a little more targeted to the joints and the tendons. So Cartilax sounds like cartilage, right? It's actually what we call bioregulator, which we touched on last time. So those things I would stack together and he can actually put them in the same syringe and do that dose once a day. So the answer to your question is yes, but it's going to depend on what the precise situation is, which is why I'm always telling people, look, you can go, go rogue and buy all your peptides online. They're going to be safe. I mean, I talk about this, I posted about it. But if you don't know how to put them together, you're probably wasting your money because they have to be stacked effectively and at the right doses to really affect a change. But they're not going to hurt you regardless.
What was the one that you said for nerve health, nerve damage?
ARA 290,
Yes or no answer. Would that help with neuropathy?
possibly yes.
Okay, great. Because I work with a lot of people with neuropathy, and anything that can help, that they're, as long as
It's
it's legitimate.
it's the only one. It's the only one right now.
Perfect. Okay, let's jump on.
Okay, so we talked about some of the healing ones. We kind of covered that. Let's talk about the beauty peptide because everybody, all my female clients, as they age, their estrogen declines, their nutrients decline. For my vegan and vegetarian clients, they don't get it. So the quality of the hair. So I'm 62, my hair quality is quite good. But that is because I'm doing all the things, right? I'm exercising, I'm eating a lot of protein, I'm prioritizing the colors of the rainbow and all my whole foods and my salads and my vegetables and everything else. So I'm getting my nutrients and I'm supplementing to my blood work. And I'm lucky. Okay. So my hair is good, but most women my age find it's dry, brittle, it breaks, and they come to me, in a panic. And we have one beauty peptide called GHK-Cu. It's a copper peptide. It's blue. Oh, I should have actually shown it. If you want me to, I will, because it's very pretty in color. And we were working with it this morning. You get a little bit of burn from it sometimes. Some people do. And so I have to, again, dose it carefully.
What
Make
do you
sure
mean burn?
when you inject it, it's copper. So you might get like a little sting from the copper. There are a few people who I know who they can't do it. So I usually let people try it first and make sure. I would say like 95% of my clients can, but one or two times I've had people say, I can't do it. I can't do it. It burns. For myself, I have to have it very diluted, but it is the only beauty peptide we have. And I guarantee you, this will be in every beauty product within 10 years. It's already in serums, hair foams, face creams. I use it topically as well, but I inject it and it helps with fine lines and wrinkles. It helps bring the collagen to the surface. It helps with hair, skin, and nails. So this is very, very popular right now, and it can be mixed. We have a glow product that most people have heard about of their peptides. It's GHK-Cu, the copper peptide, with a little BPC and a little TB-500. And so that's what I use, and that's going to help with muscle regeneration, tissue regeneration. If you've had a surgery, I might have mentioned my husband had a Mohs surgery and had about 30 stitches on his face. He did the CLO, which is GHK-Cu, BPC-157, TB-500, and KPV within 4 weeks. You couldn't see where the scar was. So again, I have to make a decision. Am I going to use straight GHK-Cu? Am I going to use Glow? Am I going to use CLO? It depends on the particular situation. But it's blue. The powder is actually blue, and then when you constitute it, it's this gorgeous royal blue color, and it's miraculous. I've had many clients tell me they're facialists or, what are you doing? What are you doing? So I use that for myself almost daily.
Is it also preventative? So, for example, someone's 25 years old, they've still got great skin, they've got a glow, if I can use that word, about them. And we know that it used to be Botox. They'd say if you took Botox when you're 20, by the time you were 35, you still wouldn't have a 35-year-old face. Does that work with this as well? So it's preventative for someone 25 taking it, or they don't need to yet?
I do have younger people taking it, but it's more about their hair. So I think that they're, younger and younger women and men, I have lots of men that take it. Younger and younger people are becoming more aware. Listen, when I was that age, it was like I washed my face, I put some baby oil on, and I was done, right? I mean, we didn't know about sunscreen. We'd lay there, tanning. We didn't know about that. Now, due to social media and obviously everything else, people are aware of it. So I do think that if somebody was to use it prophylactically, it would help because it can reduce fine lines and wrinkles. But people always also use it for other kinds of skin issues, rosacea, eczema. It's just all we have to target skin health. So there are other use cases for it. It's just our only one. People always say, "Oh, I want help with my skin, hair, nails, whatever." That's it. That's all we have. There is not another identified peptide that's going to help with that. So, good question. I think possibly yes. Yes.
So one other question before we go on to the next one, because this is fascinating. Quality of hair makes it more beautiful, gives it this vibrant feel. It's healthier. Can it help people that have lost their hair or losing their hair to stop losing it or regrow?
So, yes, I have people who, I mean, obviously, I have someone, a woman who's a bit older. She wears wigs, she uses it, and she does feel that she has reported to me that she feels that creates more hair growth. It's the same for the younger women. Listen, I have a lot of female clients, young female clients, their hormones are completely dysregulated. They've grown up not eating properly. Their hair, I mean, falling out, the stress of life, everything else. Think about, what we've gone through in LA with fires or any these create or COVID, right? This creates stressful situations in the body. And so I have a lot of younger women that have reported hair loss. So they're on GHK-Cu and almost 100% of the time they report hair growth. But unlike minoxidil or finasteride, which is a terrible drug, um, if you use minoxidil and you stop, you will lose the benefits, period, full stop. This is a bit different. Again, remember, minoxidil is exogenous. It's not natural to your body, whereas the peptides are. So it's allowing your body to do what it should be doing. Now, listen, my husband's almost bald. I don't think he can start doing massive amounts of GHKCU and it's gonna, bring the hair back. But for sure, for people who, I mean, I have a client right now that just went through a hair transplant. His hair was already really, really, really good, but he has, an early he's young, but he has a situation that he wants to try to get ahead of, and we're using it for him. I have a family member who's a young man, but he already sees, that male pattern baldness, and he also is using it to try to mitigate some of those issues. It's very, very popular in college right now, too.
This is the thing as well, just to remind the listeners or people that are watching, these are exactly what are in our body. We're not taking anything that I know there's over 7,000 peptides in our body, and they
Right.
have different chain lengths, which is why they talk the chain and length in there. All you're doing is you're adding to what's already in your body, even though it's synthetically gen or made, it's matching what's in your body, so your body accepts. I just want to just drop that in there.
Correct.
Let's jump on to the next one. What's next up?
Okay. So we've talked about BPC-157, TB-500, KPV, which I realize I do have on my list. Let's talk about NAD because I think a lot of people have also heard of NAD, NAD plus. So there has been a lot of controversy about NAD plus. The people who would be the doctors in the space, in the peptide space that I respect, have kind of flip-flopped. And you can walk down, any street in Beverly Hills or I'm sure Manhattan or, any big city in the US, and you're going to see wellness clinics and everywhere you're going to see are these IV infusion places, right? And people tell me all the time, "Oh, yeah, I get NAD. I go for these infusions." So when you go for the infusions, they're generally very expensive and they're pumping you with at least 500 milligrams of NAD, and it's like in this bag and it's pumping in. I could never do that because I'm not a needle person, and the idea of an IV sitting in me for a long time, not of interest to me. But what people feel is they feel this kind of rush of energy and a little bit of nausea, and it takes a couple hours, and they can't even decide if they feel good or not. And it's too much NAD. It's just too much being put in your system. So, look, is it going to hurt you? No. But if you do it yourself, if you do it sub Q, some people like it 7 days a week, a tiny bit. I personally like it 3 days a week. The total weekly dose would be 300 milligrams. And what this does, it's it's in the category of a mitochondrial repair. So we can go back to the mitochondria later. I have another one I want to talk about, but it protects, restores, and helps you create that energy, that ATP. It reduces oxidative stress. It helps create cellular energy, cellular resistance. For me, no question, it improves fatigue. I never, ever, ever feel tired in the day. It doesn't matter how bad my sleep is, to be honest. And that doesn't mean I can't improve my sleep, and I'm always striving to. But keeping NAD in my system, there is no question. I don't kind of feel that drag. I don't, like, oh, it's 4 o'clock, I need a cup of coffee. And when I don't have it in my system, I feel it. So it is, if people in their 30s ask me for it, I generally say no, don't waste your money because your NAD levels don't start to decline till you're in your 40s. But again, everything else has to be done correctly. And you can take the precursors orally, NMN. I just, I didn't find that to change anything for me personally. So my clients who take the NAD report that they feel the other peptides actually work better. So if you're on a GLP and you're getting stalled out and you add the NAD, it helps push things forward.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the NAD, the oral NADs. I see them a lot at the biohacking events and people, jumping on them and loving them. And I do believe there's also a placebo effect at times as well. And as you said at the beginning, the only one, the BPC-157, is the one that you believe orally works. The NAD, you don't believe that works orally.
I do not.
Okay.
Well, I would say with 100% certainty, there you won't find a study that shows that the NAD plus supplements actually change the amount of NAD you have in your system. I don't think there is anything to support that.
Great information. I love it.
But that doesn't mean that there's not 800 sellers on Amazon selling it. It
Oh,
just
yeah.
doesn't do anything. And by the way, that goes for a lot of supplements. You know, I know we're not talking about supplements, but just to the listener, we get bombarded with all this information, right? Oh, well, what about this? Or should I take this at night? Well, what about these Chinese herbs? I always say, look, for the most part, they're not going to hurt you. Okay. And I'm not going to comment when my clients come to me with a laundry list, but if they're not changing anything, why are you wasting your time and money on them? And you can go to a seller and you can say, hey, do you have any data to support this? And then at least you're making an informed decision. So one of those supplements that has gotten a lot of airplay in the last few years is resveratrol. And
Mm.
even my dad said the other day, well, it comes from wine. And well, there's nothing to support. We're talking about he'd have to drink like 5,000 glasses of wine a day to get the resveratrol that might actually do something. So, but people were saying take resveratrol, it's anti-aging. So I actually wrote a letter. I bought it, to be honest. I bought it, the one that was considered the best. And it was very expensive. Took it, when it came to reordering it, I sent the guy a letter. Do you have anything? He said no. I said, so you have nothing, nothing. You can't even pretend. He said no. I said, I appreciate your honesty. And I was done with resveratrol. I mean, there's just nothing to support it. So, check these things, right? And make sure. And honestly, it's the same with peptides. You're not going to find a lot of information. So, we have to make the decisions on our own, but you have tons and tons and tons of anecdotal data. Um, and also, people feel like these were kind of discovered, which they were to a certain degree in Russia, a doctor named Vladimir Kavinson, and you know during World War I, trying to figure out how to help these soldiers repair, come back to life. These were 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, and this guy discovered these peptides and bioregulators and was using them, and their quality of life changed. And so we just have a lot of data anecdotally to support them. So, yeah, that's
Uh,
any.
and I will turn around and say some of the greatest technology that we have for health it has come out of Russia, does come out of Russia. They've got incredible scientists, and we get caught up sometimes in political opinions
Sure.
rather than looking at what we can actually do for human health. So I'm a huge advocate for the Russian technologies and discoveries. They're brilliant scientists.
Yep, and they released a couple years ago all these bioregulator sequences because the guy died, and I think his son released all the papers and everything. So, okay, so we've talked about GHK-Cu, beauty peptide. The next one that I personally wouldn't travel or leave home without is called Thymosin Alpha-1. We might have talked about it briefly. It's an immune modulating peptide. I use Thymosin Alpha-1 cyclically for clients to help strengthen your body's immune response. So, people who travel, let's say they're going to weddings, festivals, concerts a lot with a lot of people. Look, we now know what happened with COVID, right? But thymosin alpha-1 helps you improve your defense to viruses, to these loads that you're going to be on planes. It helps repair the intestinal lining, histamine regulation, and also for people who've gone through infections and autoimmune situations. That's my first line of defense. That's what I always start with. And I'll do like a 10-day reboot. But if I was going to get on a plane, which I do often, I'll take it for a couple days before, a couple days after. I find that people who take it regularly in these cycles tend to be my clients that don't get sick. And by the way, thymosin alpha-1 was used by medical doctors during COVID to great results. So that was one of the peptides that was being used before what we talked about 2023 when these peptides were put on this, dangerous category 2 list. So if you start feeling a tickle and you load up on this peptide, you will generally either not get sick or it's gone in a couple days. My daughter just delivered some to my dad today who started getting a cold. So that's another one. I would not go on a vacation or travel anywhere. I want to make sure, like if you know that thing that you're like, wait a minute, 5 minutes ago I felt totally fine and now I feel something. You get on that thymosin alpha-1 and you're generally good to go.
How does that work?
The How does the immune modulating work?
Yeah.
That's a very good question. So again, like the other peptides, whatever's working against you in your body to decrease your body's ability to protect itself from the viral load that it's being exposed to. Um, Okay, the science on that I'm not quite as comfortable with, but you will, again, it's that lock and key. Your ability to de increase your body's ability to protect itself. I will give you an example. This maybe explain it better. When you get a vaccine, COVID, flu, whatever vaccine, shingles, you get a little bit, the mRNA is different, but you get a little bit of that and you feel kind of fluey and and your body sometimes has a reaction. And that's another time I'll use a thymosin alpha-1 to help help how your body reacts to the vaccine. And you generally will not have a reaction. I have to be honest, I stopped getting any vaccines now that I'm using the thymosin alpha-1. Um, I just and I have felt very good for a long time. So again, it's helping support the autoimmune imbalance that can happen in anyone's body. But so I'm not a person that I don't have a lot of infections. I haven't gone through mold detox, parasites. That's what I would use those. Thymosin alpha-1. People are using for all kinds of things. Almost anything related to any illness, that's the first line of defense.
Yeah, it sounds like what it's really doing is helping boost and support your natural immune system to be able
Yeah,
to fight back because we're under constant attack with the
correct.
immune system, whether it's what we're breathing or what we're eating or some form of inflammation. So, it sounds from what you're explaining that we're really giving it a boost. And if anything, it's almost like throwing the substitutes that are sitting on the bench onto the field of play. So you've got 14 players against 11 on the other team.
I like
So that's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool. That's a good way to explain it.
Okay, you have to give me credit if you use that one then.
Okay, I
No.
will. I will. Okay, the next one probably next to GLPs, these might be the most popular, well, BPC aside, are the growth hormone peptides and the growth hormone releasing peptides. And most people know them by name Tesamorelin. I do think we touched on this last time. Tesamorelin, Ipamorelin, all the morelins. There's hexamorelin, simorelin, and then CJC-1295. These all work in a similar way. Simorelin, I don't really deal with hexamorelin and simorelin. They're sort of when I say older peptides, those were used a while ago. There are still people using them. They're gentler. Tesamorelin was FDA approved for reducing visceral fat and specifically in people with HIV for muscle wasting.
Mm.
So tesamorelin's kind of the strongest of all of them. That would not be something I would use because I don't have really any visceral fat. But for my clients that have a lot of visceral fat, that's what I would go to. And what they do, they send a pulse and it's short acting. Some of them are a few minutes, and maybe CJC might be up to 20, maybe 30 minutes. And they send a pulse to help you with muscle recovery, muscle growth, protein synthesis, and IGF-1. So that's insulin growth factor. They use these if you have a kid that isn't growing properly, they'll use these. So these are actually used quite a bit. They can be abused if there's, somebody who's a bodybuilder and they're trying to build more and more muscle. They don't realize that their receptors will burn out. So these have to be cycled, but we have enough different ones that if you want to stay on it for a good part of the year, you can. One of my personal favorite ones is literally called IGF-1 LR3, and that's a 10-day cycle, and it's a very small pulse for your body to help increase your muscle mass. They call it the animal peptide. You get a bit hungry, so you have to increase your protein intake. But it helps with sleep. So that's dosed twice a day, like 5 days a week. And that is really your best bet. If you are working out, if you're eating right, you take these, you will see a reduction in body fat and increase in muscle, like guaranteed 100%. Not even a question. There's no placebo there. They work if you do all the things. So the first time I did a cycle, I just did straight Ipamorelin because again, I don't need, sometimes they're blends. At the end of well, you want to wait a little bit because it keeps working your system. So let's say 12 weeks after I started an 8-week cycle, I had reduced 2% body fat, gained 2% muscle. My weight stayed stable. That's what you want. That's what my clients are looking for. I just had a client, he actually in 3 months lost 11% body fat, gained 11% muscle from the tesamorelin ipamorelin cycle.
Huge.
Absolutely 100% works every time if you are doing all those things. So those are kind of my favorites. And because for myself, like a very lean physique that's muscled, and I like my muscles to be strong and healthy, those are peptides that I use on constant cycles, as much as you can. You have to take a little break sometimes, but growth hormone peptides are phenomenal.
One thing I want to remind everybody, go back and listen to the first podcast because some of the things that Lisa's talking about here was explained in much more detail in the first one. For example, visceral fat, that's the fat that surrounds your organs that you can't see, that's critical to make sure your inner workings are going well. But I urge you, go back and listen to the first podcast if you haven't listened to it before you get onto this one. Okay, so Lisa, we finished with that one. What's on next?
So I think the next one that's just all over Instagram right now is MOTS-c, MOTS small c. it's called an exercise mimetic, and people miss they don't understand that does not mean you should not exercise. It doesn't mean you can take MOTS-c and like, oh, I just did an hour workout. That is not what it does. MOTS-c is one of the mitochondrial repair peptides, and we need our mitochondria to create ATP and energy. We also need our mitochondria to work well because the secret to longevity is that your body knows how to use fuel properly. So if your mitochondria is not healthy and not working well, your body doesn't know what to do with the fat and the protein and the carbohydrates. You could eat 10,000 calories a day of protein and might be fine and not gain a pound. Or, if your body's not working well, you can eat, 1,000 calories, but it's insulin driven and the mitochondria is not working well, and then you can gain, weight very quickly. So MOTS-c generally gives people a lot of energy. If your mitochondria is very damaged, then sometimes you have to start with a different peptide, which actually has been FDA approved, called SS31. That is harder for most people to get. And again, I have to sort of decide with each person if they're not optimized, they may have to start with SS31 first, but they're already there. I love pairing the MOTS-c with the GLP because you get this bursts of energy, you get more metabolic flexibility, exercise endurance. And again, just this energy, that you're feeling, you're getting better fat oxidation. I love MOTS-c with the GLP and the NAD, and you're just like supercharged. Your workouts are better, you feel better. People generally say to me, "Oh, I don't want to be on my off cycle." They hate being on their off cycle. So MOTS-c will repair, so you should feel better when you're off, but sometimes it takes a few cycles to get there. Kind of back to your other question, when you finish the cycle, do you kind of go back to the way you were? And the hope and the goal is no, you don't. You're actually repairing and changing things, the physiology, but sometimes it takes a few rounds. So MOTS-c is it's kind of all over the place right now. I've probably seen more posts about MOTS-c than anything else because we've kind of moved on from the GLP because people, they kind of know what it is.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer that just because you're taking a supplement or a peptide or something, you still have to give the body what it needs. So you can't overtrain, you can't overwork out and think you can just keep, you still got to get your sleep. If we look back at children and when they were going, and all of us, we had so much energy between the ages of like, consciously of probably 5 and 20. We had so much we could go and work out and go again and party at night and work out. But eventually we would still burn out at that age, where then we'd be sleeping for 2 or 3 days that we could do because we didn't have the responsibilities we have as adults. So again, on top of the MOTS-c, you've still got to get your sleep, still got to have your workouts, not overtrain. Recovery is still a huge part of everyday life, no matter what you're doing.
Absolutely. And again, if people come to me and they're not eating well and they're not sleeping well and they're not exercising, I'm like, why do you waste your money on the MOTS-c? This is will help repair things if you are doing everything else you need to be doing. So I 100% agree with you. And I see it in my 25-year-old. She'll go days and days and days and days of not sleeping. And then she's just out, for a few more days. And that's the business she's in. But I can't live like that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So
So
the last few that I was going to talk about are the brain nootropics, the one that affect the brain, the one that you're not going to really feel in your body. Look, the MOTS-c you're going to feel, the NAD you're going to feel, BPC, TB, you're going to feel those because hopefully they're going to heal, right? Again, GLPs we know. All the other ones the TA1 I call it, the Thymosin Alpha-1, you're going to feel better. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have felt something coming on and boom, it goes away. And almost every time I think, wow, that actually worked. That was not a placebo. I know what I'm doing. And so those are all the ones you feel. We have two ones that I really like called C-Max and Selank. I'm putting them together not because they're the same. They actually work quite differently, but they also work synergistically. C-Max is cognitive. I have people that use it a few times a week, especially if you're doing a podcast, if you have a lecture, if you are feeling like you need to have your brain a little more dialed in. It acts as a nootropic to enhance your focus. I have people of many ages who use C-Max. Okay. I have people who maybe have a little cognitive decline, who want a little boost. And I have younger people that just they want to kind of be on it. All right. They want to be dialed in. They want to be perform at their highest level. And for people perhaps with ADHD, it's just going to help them with a little more focus. It is not a hit you over the head kind of peptide. It's a peptide you take and you realize, oh, you know, I did all the work I need to do today. I got through that test. I was able to focus. It's very, very popular as a nasal spray. I have not personally experimented with those yet. That's my next phase because the people that I know have taken as a nasal spray again, I'm not sure if this is placebo, but they feel that it is very, very effective as a nasal spray as well as an injection. So I mostly deal with the injections, but that's sort of my next thing is to start experimenting with this. So they'll take a hit. I mean, some of these peptides entering the nasal canal into the brain, that's why I think those are more effective. I don't think you could take BPC nasal intranasally and it's not going to do anything. Okay. So that's C-Max. Yes, I have people that just take C-Max. And I have people that take the other one that I mentioned, Selank. Selank is sort of the opposite. Selank calms. Selank would be used as an alternative to like a what am I trying to think of? Drugs that people take that calm you down, like an anti-anxiety medication.
Sure, Prozac or something along those
Yeah,
lines.
there's one that I'm thinking of that I can't. So Selank helps emotional regulation and calm, but not hit you over the head, not drug, not like, "Ugh, I'm tired." It it works well with the cognitive piece of the CMAX because they almost like need each other sometimes for some people. You need that enhanced cognitive benefit, but you also need to calm and have that resilience, that stress resilience, right? So neither one of them, it's not like the C-Max is going to jack you up and the Selank is going to calm you down. And actually, by the way, some people actually take them literally together in the same injection. I tend to dose them separately, but you can see how for some of my clients, maybe they want to get off an SSRI. They're taking an anti-anxiety med. And so we'll try this to see if it can help, again, create the resilience you need, the calm, the regulation, but also keep your mood high and elevated. So those are two really, really interesting peptides. I think you're going to see a lot more of that as people want to get off a prescription medication. Think about it. When you take a med or an SSRI, you can't just go off of it. You have to titrate down. It takes time. You have to work with a doctor because you can have a lot of side effects. There's no side effects with these. Absolutely none.
Sounds like it would be great for college students that have their finals coming up or having to study and want to be alert before, like you said, going on podcasts, speaking, or it's later in the day and you've had a lot of really heavy meetings through the week. Maybe it's Friday, you've got the biggest meeting of the week coming up. You've got to be sharp.
I try to dose the C-Max like I prefer it in the morning because again, you're going to be a little more alert. It's not like drinking a cup of coffee. It's just that dialed in feeling where you're very focused and the Selang can be done in the morning with it or in the evening again for that calm. I had a gentleman going through a very bad situation in his family, and he was very stressed. He was on all kinds of meds. So we took his dose up super, super high. We tried it twice a day. It didn't seem to work. We played with it. We took the dose way back down and added in the C-Max, and that sort of did the trick. Those two things together, and we took the dose way, way lower. So again, everyone's body is going to react differently, and the way they're going to process these peptides is going to be a little bit different. That's the same with the GLPs, right? Someone can take 1 milligram and have this incredible change, and someone's on 15 milligrams. That's bad. But that's my point is everyone's body is going to react differently.
Is there a way that the body's made up? So, for example, if someone is 95 pounds and 5 foot tall, you wouldn't need the same dose as someone that's 6'6", or is it relative to your position and condition in life?
I don't think it's relative to your condition or your size and weight. I think it's the your own body's internal mechanism. So if I have surgery and I weigh just over 100 some pounds, we don't have an exact number, and my husband is, 80 pounds, 90 pounds more than me, we would still probably do the same dose.
Okay.
So it's not, but we're both healthy and in good shape, but it's not related to our size. It's not related to age. And then I have to figure out how that person's physiology is working. By the way, it's the same thing for vitamin D. Okay. As an example, I cannot get my vitamin D levels. I'm struggling to get to that optimal level where my husband is there and we take the same supplementation, right? And I'm smaller than him. So it has nothing to do with our weight or our size. I have to take more and more and more to try to get to an optimal level. I really feel it's the same with the peptides. We don't know. That's why with the GLPs, I start super low. I started a woman today in another state, so I had to show her on, we did it on FaceTime, 0.75 milligrams 2 times a week. It was an instinct I had based on our conversations and what her needs were. It really wasn't about her size. Had she been quite a bit heavier, it might have gone up, but it is our own internal body's physiology, and we have to find what's right for each of us. I just don't have certain things you can say, okay, this is the protocol. There's some longevity peptides. You go, this is the protocol. Or even the Thymosin Alpha-1. Yes, we're going to do 1.5 milligrams for 10 days. I'm going to do everybody the same. But usually I have to work with it and see what I feel is best for each person.
I don't know how many we've got left to go before we move on with the C-Max. How does that work? Like, you take the injection, how quickly do you feel that wake up and how long does it last? So, for example, if I had a talk at 6 o'clock at night and I'm going to be on stage for an hour and a half speaking, what time would be the best? And again, does that come down to the individual and where they are, or is there kind of a set protocol?
Usually people take it in the morning because they know they're going to have a heavy workload day. If you specifically had something at 6 o'clock, I would probably say take it in the afternoon. It's not, as I said, going to be I had a cup of coffee kind of feeling, or, I don't drink Diet Coke or any sodas, but they're heavily caffeinated. And if I did, I know I'd be buzzing, almost like heart palpitation. That's not what C-Max feels like. It helps you just think, oh, everything's working right. My brain's firing like it needs to fire. So it's a great question. Most peptides have a very short half-life and they don't sit in your system very long. But as we know with GLPs and it lasting 7 days, they continue to work, on your body. I think I would probably do that one in the afternoon though, if you were going to, do that. Most people though are taking it just like you said, to have a heavy workload day. I'm going to be in the office or I'm going to be seeing clients or I'm going to be, have some particular thing I have to do and they'll do in the morning. But yeah, I would do that in the afternoon. It's not going to last. It's not going to last for 12 hours.
Okay, that's great. And again, like you opened up when you were talking about these two, you don't feel it in the same way you might with the MOTS-c or BPC-157 or some of these other ones, but it's still so valuable because we often react off of what we feel. So when someone takes a cup of coffee and they'll go, oh yeah, okay, I can feel it. I'm waking up now. And yet sometimes the things that we don't feel are the ones that are having the most impact.
Absolutely 100%. And that is with the C-Max and Selank. And people will use it for a couple weeks and then, text me or reach out and say, wow, I didn't even realize how much I got done, how much more effective, how much calmer I am. Um, I think that the next frontier with those, in particular in the nootropics, is going to be for people with cognitive decline. You know, um, the studies on GLP and Alzheimer's were a bit disappointing. However, there's no question that a lot of the peptides reduce inflammation, and that's what's happening in the brain as we decline, right? So we have the inflammation. I think that C-Max and Selank are going to be used quite a bit more in those kind of situations. And I do think that the studies will change on the GLP and that it will, in the next few years, we'll find out that these peptides are going to be extremely beneficial in those types of situations.
I'm personally excited to find out how, with that neurological impact you can have from the brain. I work with over 1,000 patients or members with Parkinson's, and I'm
Right.
sure as they continue to discover more and more peptide and peptide use, it'd be fascinating to see if we can reverse neurological decline over time. And
I
some of
mean,
that,
absolutely. And also, these diseases, cancer, Parkinson's, all these things have been around for so long. Why is it that we don't have not identified how to create more significant changes? I mean, it's pretty crazy when you think about it. So maybe peptides are the next source. But it's going to be hard because the pharmaceutical companies, they don't
uh,
really, they're not going to really support this.
that's where we go away a little bit from scientific research and go into real life success, because you can't fake real life. But that's my personal opinion. Some people want science, they want proof, they want to have all this data testing. Sometimes for me, it's better to go and explore and experiment safely, because again, with peptides, it's natural,
Yeah.
or replicating what's already in your body,
Yeah.
and sit around waiting for somebody else to save you that doesn't really care about you personally. That's just my opinion. So, what are we on to? What have we got left?
Really, the last one, which I wasn't sure we would get to, is called Kisspeptin. I added it to my list because I'm getting a lot of requests for it. And Kisspeptin is a hormone regulating peptide. It does not, doesn't create hormones. It doesn't increase your testosterone or your estrogen. It doesn't increase that, but it helps your body, it opens up your body's ability to help create these things on your own if they become dysregulated. So I do have people that use it for estrogen balance, to possibly increase testosterone, libido. There's a couple other that are more of sexual health, but kisspeptin is definitely one of them. Fertility signaling, and possibly some thyroid help. And what I'm seeing more and more when I'm testing younger people are a lot more hormonal imbalances in younger and younger people that I'm guessing we ever had before. So, I think people who are younger who are trying to have kids, there's a lot of people. I mean, I've known in the last 20 years, people talk about how hard it is to get pregnant, or, all this infertility stuff. I don't know again, when I was having kids, 40 years ago, I mean, I honestly don't think it was as difficult. And part of that is going back to what we've talked about a few times: our air, our water, the processed food, the who knows what the heck, the is in our soil, what we're eating, the plastics, the perfume candles, and all the crap we put on our bodies, right? That's all, they're endocrine disruptors that's affecting our body. So I have tested, I can't even believe how many young men have really tanked testosterone. These are actually healthy people in general. When they fix their metabolic imbalance, generally their own body's natural testosterone is increased and they can create an embryo. Kisspeptin is a peptide that if somebody came to me and say, I'm having libido issues, My testosterone's low, but I'm not ready to start taking testosterone. I want to try to do this a little more naturally rather than taking the testosterone, which is going to dampen your body's own ability to make it. That I would turn to Kisspeptin. So that's probably the best. No, not probably. It is for sure the best hormone regulating peptide we have. And so I'm really seeing more and more people ask for it and want these benefits. And I think it is due to our environment and how, our world is completely out of balance. And so we're out of balance, right? I mean, listen, there's things we can't control. I can't control the air I breathe. I can control somewhat the water coming into my house and I can put systems on, but there's just if I go to a restaurant, I don't know what I'm getting.
Yeah, I also think to add to that, and this is a little bit off of the peptide thought, but when it comes to men, testosterone, ED, different things that are going on, there's been such a change in the last 20 years on what masculinity is. And so psychologically, when you don't engage in feeling like a man that you used to admire, maybe your father, your grandfather had a certain style. And then I'm not going into the whole misogyny thing. I'm completely against that. But I do feel that I've even noticed it that men are not as powerful physically and mentally as they used to be. Now, I'm not talking about the fitness world. I'm talking about generally. I see it with the youth that I work with. It's very changed. So I believe there's some psychological, which I'm a huge believer in, our mindset, our belief, that also has an effect on our physiology.
That's an interesting hypothesis. I would probably agree with you that if you feel demasculated in any way, I mean, maybe it does affect your testosterone, but I would say that the people that I'm talking about that I've dealt with, that is not the situation.
Sure.
One in particular, he's gained before he came to me, gained and lost weight, gained and lost weight. Sometimes he's working out, sometimes he looks incredibly fit. He's only, 31 years old. He wants to have kids, so he doesn't want to take testosterone. But I mean, his testosterone numbers are extremely low. And I think it's from all that up and down and up and down and up and down and messing with his system. I have a couple other clients who are doing everything right. I mean, they're leading exemplary lives in terms of, their nutrition intake, their exercise, and still their testosterone is low. So it's very hard to explain. Um, and for sure, women, I mean, all the perfumes and the cosmetics, and we know how this affects our body. Look, and it took me years to stop using a plastic water bottle. I love those spout bottles with the pop top, even though I was like, what are you doing? Like, stop using that. It took me a long time to say, I need to, use glass. So who knows what it's doing to our system. So that Kisspeptin is the one that I would use for that.
Yeah, and I got to add on to that. I was working with Dr. Eckel, who actually wrote the foreword to my book about balance, get your balance back. And he was talking about the impact of the air fresheners that we have in cars that
Yeah.
you hang on the rear view mirror or they
Yeah.
spray when you get your car.
Yeah.
He said it's incredible the effect they have on your neurological system. And he said the first thing, take them out of your car, get rid of them. They serve no purpose except damaging your health. You think they're making it smell better, but it's killing you slowly inside. So I just want to just throw that in there. And this is again what you're talking about, being able to regulate back into the body as it should be.
Well, on that note, I don't think any fragrances are healthy. I personally have an aversion to them. And, I've had to tell people in my life, I can't hug you because I don't want to smell like your perfume all day. I mean, I've had people get kind of angry at me, but I'm not I'm putting myself on a high horse. I literally cannot stand the smell of it. So I think, listen, everyone's going to come to this in their own time. There's people in the biohacking world who are doing 100% of it. There's people like me that are maybe doing 70. I can't do everything perfectly. Someone came to me the other night for dinner and he said, Lisa, you're all into all these things. Why am I drinking out of plastic glass? And I said, okay, that's a great question. But we started the evening by sitting outside, and my daughter correctly gave him, a nice plastic, not a solo cup, because we were sitting outside and she wanted to bring glass outside. But that was a great question that he asked. Even though he's not somebody that was in very good shape himself and not following everything, he was questioning me. And I said, look, most people can't do 100%. We do the best we can. I could get glass, I could get a sleeve like I have with my tea here, but you know, we're trying our best. That's all we can really do.
There's roughly 6 different plastics that they use for drinking out of. 2 of them actually don't leak plastics. And so it depends on the quality of the plastic you're using. I would also go to another point. I've spoken on the same, convention summits that Brian Johnson's spoken at. We've been on stage and done stuff. And you could say he's doing it 100%. But I also would turn around publicly, openly, and say he's not living life.
Well,
And,
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
and our system has
yeah,
a filtration system in it.
yeah.
So you can do some things that aren't perfect, but the body's made to filter them out. It's when we overload the body, the filtration system is so now in a survival mode, it can't clean. So it's not about being supposedly one opinion in the biohacking world of perfection. It's about what am I doing to keep myself at a healthy level that when I have that something that maybe isn't perfect, I know I'm still safe.
I love that. And Brian Johnson's using peptides now. He's talking about peptides. He actually talked about CJC-1295 and the GLPs just recently. I find that very interesting that he's getting into talking about peptides now.
He'll do anything and everything he can to test and look, it's his business. It's not
Yep.
just a thing. It's his, the more he does and helps people, the more money he's making. But I
Yep.
will say that when he stood on stage, he basically said, kill your mind, follow a routine. And then afterwards, Dr. Patrick Porter with Brain Tap came on. I've never seen him so angry. He says, don't kill your mind. That's what keeps you alive. That's what keeps you living. Don't give up life to follow a routine. Live life and have your routine to support it.
I
So
love that.
uh,
I love that. And I use a lot of peptides, and I cycle them and use them, but they're just part of my morning routine. I don't really, they don't affect too many things. Hopefully they're doing all the things I'm using them for, but I'm with you. I love that. That's awesome.
and it's also allowing you to live the life you want to live,
Yeah,
which is what it should all be about.
absolutely.
So good. We're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for all your wisdom. What I will ask you to do, would you come back on and I'd like to take the top 10 questions that people have from this and bring them back in and have you answer those questions because I know there's so much out there. There's so much diverse information. There's so much positivity and negativity. And yet, as you said, we haven't seen negativity coming from it. It's just people's opinions for whatever reason. But would you come back on and take on those top 10 questions?
Sure.
It'd be,
Absolutely.
it'd be great to have you back on. Lisa, thank you so much for being here. We'll drop out how people can get in contact with you, reach out to you. And I know you've had tremendous success. Even I was down in Mexico last week, and I know you're so well connected because of what you do for others, not just because of who you are. So thank you so much for what you do.
Listen, I loved it. I love talking about it. It's my passion. So it does not work for me.
You're awesome. Thanks so much, Lisa.
Thank you.